Good afternoon to everyone. I am Marie-Lisa Dacanay. I'm the president of the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia. And I'd like to welcome you to our webinar series, which we have called COVID-19 Social Enterprise Response and Visioning Effort in Asia.
For two objectives. One is to share, collaborate, and network towards developing a responsive social entrepreneurship recovery program given COVID-19. That's why we're featuring various ways that social enterprises and social enterprise resource institutions have responded to the pandemic and how they are actually moving forward and building back better. The second objective is to reconfigure what we call social entrepreneurship SDG, Sustainable Development Goals acceleration platforms, because prior to COVID-19, we were about, when I say we, ISEA, was the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia was about to co-convene with UNESCAP a conference where we were supposed to launch and introduce social entrepreneurship platforms that would be aimed at accelerating the Sustainable Development Goals, because even before the pandemic, the United Nations system had already made a judgment that in Asia Pacific, none of the Sustainable Development Goals will be achieved by 2030 at the rate that governments and other stakeholders were moving. And the UN system was looking towards social enterprises as key actors who could contribute to accelerating the Sustainable Development Goals. No? So we had this social entrepreneurship acceleration platforms that we were about to launch. And when the pandemic happened, of course, we're now in a process of evaluating the relevance of those platforms and how we can reconfigure them so that it can fit into what social enterprises are themselves experiencing. As you know, social enterprises were also hit by the pandemic. Yeah. So for this webinar series, this is all leading up to a social entrepreneurship advocacy and leveraging conference where we will finally launch the social entrepreneurship SDG acceleration platforms on September 16 to 17, 2020. And we will be doing that virtually. So if there are any of you who will be interested to join that conference, please let us know. But that conference, the theme would be social entrepreneurship and cross-sectoral collaboration, ensuring the recovery of social enterprises towards building back better and accelerating the Sustainable Development Goals. So all told, this webinar series is contributing to that whole process of preparing us for that conference. So we're lucky and fortunate to have with us in our 9th webinar series a social enterprise resource institution who I consider to be a very important part of my own learning process, because they were Alter Trade Foundation Incorporated, together with its group of social enterprises, was actually the source of the most significant insights that resulted to my dissertation thesis. No? So the important relationship between transactional and transformational services. So those insights, no, I got from 6 cases from the Philippines, and one of the centerpiece cases was actually Alter Trade. And of course, in our recent action research to develop a set of benchmarks for transformational partnerships and women's economic empowerment in agricultural value chains that we are supposed to be developing into one of the social entrepreneurship SDG acceleration platforms to be launched in September 2020. Again, Alter Trade figures significantly as one of the source of our inspirations. No? So it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Alter Trade Foundation Incorporated, and with us this afternoon is its Executive Director, Edwin Martin Lopez, and he will be joined through video by 2 of the important inspirations also to my thesis and our benchmarks. No? They're partner people's organizations who have been empowered through the years to be co-equal partners of Alter Trade. So Imelda Cervantes and Angelito Estrama are actually leaders, no, of the partner producer communities whom Alter Trade have engaged over many years. So it's a pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Edwin Lopez from Alter Trade Foundation Incorporated. So take it away, Ted.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Lisa, Malu, and Marlon, and all the others. I consider all of you are as colleagues in social development. And thank you for inviting Alter Trade Foundation and allowing us this opportunity to share our experience. And first, let me introduce Alter Trade Foundation, or ATFI. We were organized in 1997, and way back during the time of the implementation of land reform in Negros. And we worked for the upliftment of the rural poor in Negros Island. Most of them were the sugarcane farm workers from the early 90s. And the Negros farm workers became beneficiaries of agrarian reform. And then they became the new owners of the lands that they and their ancestors tilled for centuries. Deprived of, most of them were deprived of formal education, and they were mentally conditioned as wage earners. The agrarian reform beneficiaries were without production capital. They lacked knowledge in farm technology, and then they were incapable of managing their newly acquired lands. Then we go to the other frames, yes. So to fulfill this mission, ATFI was assisted by Bread for the World of Germany, and we sought to empower the agrarian reform beneficiaries through affordable credit, sustainable farming systems, and holistic management trainings for them to become self-sufficient and self-governing communities. Today, the empowered agrarian reform beneficiaries and their communities have been transformed from the former farm workers to become real farmers who manage their farms collectively as an enterprise and practice fair trade values. Please, yeah, yes. They've been practicing fair trade values. And then the next plate, please. The women are regarded equally with men and assume responsible roles in their community and homes. The next, yeah. They have collectively acquired their own farm machineries, sent their children to college, built their own modern homes, and gained their capacity to negotiate with banks, sugar centrals, and local government. They have diversified the monocrop sugar plantations and adapted their farms to climate change calamities, and they can now produce their own grains, vegetables, fruits and root crops, poultry and uh, livestock, assuring their households of their daily food needs for the whole year. They have established community processing of farm products and directly sell to consumers. Actually, ATFI now assists 13 agrarian reform communities with a membership of 623 farmers. More than 53% of them are women. They federated themselves as Negros Organic and Fair Trade Association, or NOFTA, to enhance their negotiating capacity with the market, with the private sector, and the local governments. Due to the health crisis caused by COVID-19 pandemic, ATFI had to adjust its operations by adapting to the quarantine rules. We provided orientation to farmers on the nature of the COVID-19 that necessitated compliance to the safety protocols and measures. Face masks and disinfectants were distributed to the communities before because these were not distributed by the local governments. ATFI also assisted farmer communities to access services from the LGUs, such as food packs, their SAPs. We have lobbied with the local governments in behalf of our farmer beneficiaries and partners. Among the leaders of these agrarian reform beneficiaries is Imelda Cervantes. She's from the Minoro Isabel Agrarian Reform Beneficiaries Association, or MIARBA. It is a very progressive and diversified farming community in La Castellana, Negros Occidental. Imelda is highly regarded for her skill in finance management and also in organizational management. Although she had not been to college, Imelda is capable of making their own, generating their own financial statements, in conducting audit. And so they have been very successful, and in fact, their organization could earn as much as a gross income of 7 million a year. Imelda is here to share to us the development they have realized and how they are surviving under the pandemic of COVID-19. Another farmer leader is Angelito Estama. He's the president of their association, Hacienda Esperanza Communal Agrarian Reform Beneficiaries, or HECARBA. And he's currently the president of the Negros Organic and Fair Trade Association, or NOPTA. Angelito's leadership has been recognized by farmers who elected him as their representative to the Provincial Agrarian Reform Coordinating Committee, or PARCO. Angelito and HECARBA had their own experience to share in adapting to the COVID-19 crisis. So let us hear their stories.
Ako po si Imelda Cervantes, ng Isabela Castellana, isang member ng Minoro Isabel Agrarian Reform Beneficiaries, o ERB. Sa akong ina na may 6 na anak, 5 lalaki at isang babae. Sa akong farmers din, katulad nyo, na nagsasaka ng maliit na pain. Sa akong secretary ng asosasyon sa halos 16 years na servisyo sa aming asosasyon bilang keeper at saka secretary. Sa ngayon po, ang ginagawa ko sa amin, ay nagtrabaho ako sa aming asosasyon at same time sa aming maliit na Bali, ang MIARBA, isa ka asosasyon sa mga ERB, naging communal na muna ang pagtumala sa among asosasyon. Alin sa 2004, sa Subok. Ang among asosasyon, may 132 ka members siya kabilugan. Bali, ang 80, amo na siya ang agrarian reform beneficiaries. Ang nagabakon sa amon nga dividendo, mga benepisyo sa amon. Ang the rest na nga mga 52 yata yung members, mga asawa ng mga holder na member ng MIARBA. Noong 2004, nag-legal registered kami ng aming asosasyon sa Security and Expedition. Every 2 years, nag-elect kami ng mga officers. So, yung lupa namin na pinataniman ng tubo ay halos mga 56 hectares at may mga iba kami mga diversification project tulad ng mga fruit trees, yung mga mangga, rambutan, yung may mga gulayan man kami na pin-grant ng DAR ng mga 650,000 yata yung bayugas, yung tinatawag namin na climate change resilient project. Sa ngayon, nagpadayon kami sa patikang sa amon na project sa Tubo. Nagabaton man ang amon members ang dividendo kada tapos ng cropping. At ang amon nga net income, ginagawa namin ng sharing scheme. Ditong crop year, nakadividend kami ng 29,000 bawat kulwa holder. Piti kulwa holder nakatanggap ng 29,000. At saka yung labor incentive na 10% from the net, parang 200 workers, members, and non-members yung nakatanggap ng labor incentive. Yung sa ngayon, yung namin, yung financial fund, parang nasalanbang kami sa ngayon na loan. Kasi sabi ng ATFI, parang pwede na kami maka-loan sa institution para ang fund na naka-allocate sa amin relate mo sa wala na kami nag-loan sa ATFI kasi kapon ang support sa ATFI sa amon, sa technical, sa agricultural, sa paggawa ng mga FS, sa mga training, kung ano man mga training na ng ATFI, sila sa amon sa Japon, sila nag-support, naghahatag sa amon sa mga idea, sa sa amon mga experts, sila ang nag-abiling sa amon sa pagpasiliti. Sa tanan namon nga mga subong mga pag-ibig kami sa Japon sa mga planning, sa amon mga community, Japon ay ATFI. Isan pa nga, under na kami sa Sandar, sa Landbank, pero ang nagabulig sa amon proseso sa mga dokumento, yung pa rin, untitled pa rin. Kasi hindi naman hindi naman naging support sa aming technique yung bank. Parang nagpapahiram na sila ng pera, pero yan lang yung untitled pa rin. Yun ang nabibigay sa amin sa lahat ng mga development. Nagpa-facilitate sa amin kahit saan, pagawa ng proposal, may mga aspeto ng aming mga kakulangan na hindi namin kaya, untitled pa rin kami. At at ang mga stasyon, damo sa mga sa mga trials man sa mga ang agyanamon, sige hapon ang pagbinuligay sa amon management, kaya po dara lang din sa kabayan sa pagtatrade, mga problema na mga dalog sa montana, sa mga galitis, sa man mga aspeto sa para na kaya ang sige hapon sa desert text nang very supportive bilang adult. Sa sining nga panahon na kaya time nga may mga problema kami sa among asosasyon. Kami mismo sa nga ara naging elect nila bilang officers. Do hindi kami sa amon kasarang pero sa amon yung pagbiniligay pag ng COVID. Nagkapabilin kami gapon na mangin mabakod sa ang pag-iugong sa members. Bali sa PO level, parang nasya kami sa nangyari kasi hindi naman kami aware yun sa mga virus na yan. Pero kung specific natin tingnan, yung epekto niya sa project namon sa production, kung masasabi mo yung hindi naman kami masyadong affected sa pagtatrabaho kasi nandoon naman kami sa sa pero yung isang tinitingnan namin doon yung impact na nangyari, nagkawala ng supply yung fertilizer. Parang naubos sa merkado. Wala naman kami mabighan ng mga fertilizer at saka ibang pa mga farm inputs sa palaya namin. So parang nagpanik yung mga tao at ang mahirap sa transportation kasi kung maglabas ka ng komunidad mo, marami ka pang proseso sa mga papers, katulad ng mga travel pass, at saka mga question sa boundary. At ang isa pa, hindi namin na-prepare. Yung nahirapan kami mag-withdraw ng itiro namin sa aming mga members na nagtrabaho. Ang isa pa doon, yung limitado na mga supply ng mga commodities. Parang nawala yung mga tinapay, mga dilata, mga noodles, at labi yung alcohol at saka Christmas nang wala kami. So yung alternative na namin, yung panyo, yung nalagay namin na lang, yung pag-first bid. At saka kung titingnan mo naman sa sa household, sa every household ng mga members, isa lang ang makalabas ng bahay, yung may quarantine, ang quarantine pass. Pero at saka dugang pa ng mga gasto, yung mga Christmas na gagamitin mo, wala ka naman bilhan ng supply ng alcohol. At saka ibang mga pagkaon, wala na. Kung makalabas ka man, yung doble sa mga presyo man, kung makapili ka, yung mga items na makita mo yun sa merkado, parang dumugog din yung presyo. Wala ka ng trabaho, wala ka ng katutukan. Yung at saka isa pang parating epekto, yung emotional, yung psychological effect na baka mahawa ka. Ngayon na may COVID, kailangan natin yung dapat yung masustain yung pagpisahan na diversification project. Kasi malay natin, hindi ito matagal sa pangmandalian lang. Tingnan ko nga, na to eh. Kailangan para maiwasan natin yung nangyari nung una. Dapat self-sufficient tayo. Doon pa lang sa community natin. Yung pagtanim ng mga iba't ibang instant food na nandyan lang sa paligid natin, dapat titingnan natin yun. Yung experience ko, yung nawala ng yung ibang pangailangan sa na kailangan mong bilhin sa merkado, nawala sa inyo, parang nun. So isang tinitingnan ko para sa namin, sa Biarba, sustain namin yung rice production na at saka yung mga gulay, mga root crops, na kahit na kung ano pa man yung mangyari sa future, parang may nandoon na yung kailangan na lang natin yung kapital para masustain yun at matibay ng bawat community. Yung sa alternative foundation, yung sa amon sang alcohol at saka yung very important ang orientation about COVID. Orient sila sa amin sa pag-adto namin ng JA. Invite namin sila para na naman mga orientation. Saka yung sa members namin, nagbigay kami ng dividend, yung remaining dividend at saka labor incentive para magamit naman nila sa ano nila, panimalay nila. Pag ang amon sa lakyan, pahulam namon sa Department of Organic Farm, na makadistribute sila ng mga goods sa limang lalawigan na sakop ng Negros. So yung sasakyan namin na six-wheeler, yun yung ginagamit nila para mag-distribute ng mga tulong sa ibang mga bansa. Ang isang concern ko pa sa government na sana matingnan niya yung agricultural mga farmers na dapat sana isubaybayan nila yung ng pagkain para na magbukas ka ng isang program na sa mga asosasyon na katulad namin para ma-sustain yung mga kung paano papalaguhin yung mga project hindi lamang sa rice, sa vegetable, saka yung ibang pang mga livestock at saka mga poultry na sana yung support nila sa financial sa technology sa tulong ng agri trade, paano sana nila. Saka isang kulang yung financial mga kapital na sustain sa mga small scales na at saka yung mga processing na mga foods dapat na yun sa community level pa lang. Para sa future, may marami na tayong mga dyan. Titingnan ng mga products. Asa ngayon, hindi pa naman kami makagather ng malaking nagpapalo pa rin kami ng mga government protocol tungkol sa COVID at saka nag-support naman ang adult consumption ng alcohol at saka mga Christmas. Pero kami sa board level, isang tinitingnan namin na baka makaano kami ng isang plano kung mga development namin, papasok namin yan, at saka sa General Assembly, i-inform namin sa lahat ng member na makaprepare kami ng mga kung anong mga hakbang at mga plano namin para sa future pa. Magandang hapon po sa
Okay, magandang hapon po sa lahat. Ako po si Angelito Istama, may 5 mga anak, 4 na lalaki, 1 babae, at halos 4 na ka-employed sa government, 2 sa private sector. Isang may naiwan sa akin yung bunso, no? Pero may sakit siya. Ako po isa sang napilian bilang presidente sang Icarba, Hacienda, Esperanza, Communal Agrarian Beneficiaries nga na hamtang sa Barangay Nagaspi, Carlota City mula 2000 hanggang 2020 sa ngayon. No, may Anhikarba, may Nawaka na lupa na 33 hectares nalian at may 5 proyekto siya na sa ngayon na naputak. Una na sugarcane production, banana plantation production, may mascobado production siya, no, nag-start ng 19. May fruits production siya, katulad ng mga rambutan at iba mga edible crops, mga kamote kahoy, at iba pa. At saka may mga sugarcane production juice kami at saka calamansi juice with kamuti tax. Yung sa mga projects namin, tinutulungan kami mismo ng Albertine sa mga production. Tinatap namin, tinulungan nakita kami ng CPSU, Central Philippine State University, na tinutulungan kami ng presidente nila, si Aladin Muraka. At ako sa nakitaan bilang secretary ng NOPTA, Negros Organic Bird Trade, from 2012 hanggang 2019. At 2019, napilihan ako bilang isang presidente ng NOPTA, Negros Organic Bird Trade, na may katapuan na 13 people's organization na naalokar from North Negros, Central Negros, at may northern parts, may southern parts ng Negros, no? May 623 farmers members ang NOPTA. Ang sa Hikarba, may 28 members. Sa ngayon, sa 5 mga projects na patuloy na nag-operate mismo ang sugarcane production namin. Itong last March 2020, naka-dividend po ang mga farmers natin sa Hikarba, mga mahigit 120,000 per members. No, kung tingnan mo, ang Hikarba, para agi sa tulong ng Alter Trade, nakalampas tayo sa marginalized sang 4 members. Halimbawa, mga 95 to 97 across poverty line. Yun ang goal sa Hikarba. Sa ngayon, patuloy natin na ina-advocates o tinatrabaho kasama ang mga opisyalis ng NOPTA, nila naming, nila sang amon Vice President, at mga executive officers ng NOPTA, na para maahon ang mga kahirapan sa membro ng NOPTA. Sa ngayon, noong 2017-18, 2017-18, nagre-report na kami paagis sa tulong sang Alter Trade nila Sir Ted Lopez, sila Sir Earl, na naka-actus tayo ng 73% across poverty line. No? Paagis sa mga production na tinutulong ng Alter Trade na may 3 aspeto sila sa credit, financial development, tag sa agricultural production development, tag sa organizing development. Yun ang 3 aspeto na mga technical na tinutulong sa amin ng Alter Trade. Sa ngayon, ang tingnan namin, nakapatuloy ang pag-operate natin sa mga production. Sa Mascobado ngayon, kuha tayo ng 35 to 40 kilos per day operation sa ngayon. Sa banana chips, mga banana stick, katulad nito na hinawakan ko, yun ang mga produkto na extra build-up project ng Hikarba. At pinatuloy natin ito sa NOPTA, kay sabi namin sa value chain na kailangan matulungan ng NOPTA ng Alter Trade ang sa market sa mga product ng mga business natin. Sa ngayon, patuloy-tuloy kami. Sa ngayon, maraming kaming stocks na mga agricultural production, fresh and food products na o tingnan mo, no? Kung dito kayo, siyempre makitikim na kayo dito. Ang isa lang na problema namin, ang isa lang sa problema na pagdating ng COVID noong March 14 yata, March 14, halos ang mga produkto natin, ang mga membro natin nabigla sila. Kasi ang gobyerno natin, ang LGU, nag-declared sila sa tinatawag na secur. Halos tanan, hindi makalabas, hindi makalabas sa bahay. Magluwas kung may protocol, document ka from LGU and barangay. Sample sa mga quarantine pass, travel pass, halos lahat hindi makakuha ang mga membro natin at lahat nakatipot. Kung tingnan mo ang kabuuan, walang pera na papasok, pero ang pinakamahirap yung sa banwa, sa bayan. Walang makain matao. Ang ginawa ng Hikarba sa ganitong sitwasyon, una, namigay siya ng mga produkto niya, una sa mga frontliner. Yung middle of March, namigay siya ng mga banana press, banana manok, banana ginog na banana na tinanog, at mga sugarcane juice. Bawat frontliner sa bayan sang nakailuta papuntang La Castellana, binigyan namin ng mga sugarcane juice para mabigyan sila ng pagkain hanggang nag-certify sila. Sa ngayon, naka-GCQ, mga members natin mahirapan mag-adapt. Nahirapan sila mag-adapt sa ngayon nga sitwasyon, new normal. Kasi face mask, ang mga senior citizen namin, na mga officers, hindi makalabas. Sa new normal, ang altered trade nagbigay ng mga tulong ng orientation for new normal. Halimbawa, pinupuntahan ang mga PO natin, ino-orient sila kung anong ibig sabihin ng new normal. Kasi yung mga members natin, hindi nila alam kung anong new normal. Yun, siguro, dahan-dahan sila nakaintindi kung paanong tinatawag niya new normal. Pero sa sa mga partners, hindi makita ang new normal sa gihapon. Lagi ito walang face mask kasi nagtatrabaho sa nagtatrabaho sa kutubuhan. Yun ang sitwasyon dito sa amin. Pero sa ngayon, kahit paano, naka-adapt siguro mga 40% katulad sa amin. At nagpapatulong kami sa taga-altered trade paano ma-link ang mga product ng mga farmers natin sa social media, ma-link sa ibang departamento para mabenta yung mga produkto, para patuloy-tuloy yung pag-develop mga income ng mga farmers natin. Sa ngayon, ang isa lang ang pinaka-advantage lang namin nung time ng COVID, tinuturuan kami ng altered trade paano mag-savings, savings ng income, mag-alokar ng mga budget para sa mga aktibidades ng kada PO. Siguro sa parts ng nota, pagtuloy ang pagbigay o pag-coordinate namin sa altered trade sa pagbigay sa mga members natin na binigyan sa mga marginalized sector sa paghatag sa orientation bayon sa new normal para hindi sila mahirapan sa pag-adapt dyan. Okay, maganda.
Okay. Based on the testimonies and sharing of our farmer leaders, actually, uh, Imelda and Dito are also members of the Board of Trustees of Alter Trade Foundation. We make it a point that our partners in development work from among the farmers are part of the decision making or major decision making in Alter Trade Foundation. Now, it is also a realization that COVID-19 pandemic has really put our present way of life to the test, and especially for the farmers uh, who were really uninformed about this health crisis. We are realizing that we should make ourselves more prepared for the worst and more resilient in the face of any pandemic and even of other natural disasters. Actually, we have been conducting climate change mitigation, hazard mapping, but this is the first time that all of us, even especially the farmers, have encountered this type of health crisis. Now, so through this pandemic, uh, we realize our own inadequacies in terms of food sufficiency, health safety, and ecological sustainability. Um, from it has proven that even our local governments were caught flat-footed, and they have not placed high priority on local public health systems and then local economy development. So ATFI sees that it has to improve its community interventions that would emphasize and integrate essential aspects that will ensure further resilience of the rural poor and sustain their transformation towards a more holistic empowerment of communities. First, we would like to give high priority to local food security for every household in the community and at the municipal and provincial level. Uh, in the case of Hekarba and in the case of Miarba, more or less their communities have reached a higher level of food sufficiency, and yet uh, if we are speak of a long period of this pandemic, we are not sure if this will last in 2 years and 3 years. We see that what we have achieved so far will not be enough. So we must work further for the departure from monocrop farms and crop diversification for food and fiber and livestock production that would be centered towards food security of the household. And then, of course, we have to look into providing food also for other for other Filipinos who are in the urban areas. So our areas should be able to produce a surplus food that would be shared or sold to the directly to the consumers. And so our advocacy with the local governments and the private sector at the municipal and provincial level is to modernize agro industries that are focused on food processing that promote transactional and transformational partnership with small producers. Um, our farmers have been producing the raw materials that would be essential for agro industries. And so we should we lack this we lack industries that would process the products of the farmers and that would minimize wastage and spoilage, and in fact provide more preservation of food and processing of food that would be supplied directly to the consumers. We see that we have to strengthen and sustain the municipal and provincial economy based on local value chains. We are not thinking more of because Negros had been a monocrop economy. We have been dependent from Luzon and other regions of the country for our food needs, especially for the staple food, for rice and even corn. So now we should develop more the local economy so that we could achieve this food security, and also we could establish local value chains that empower small producers and enable economic autonomy and self-reliance at a higher level, generating a local wealth at the level of the province that would be democratically distributed among the marginal production communities. So it will be a multi-stakeholder cooperation between the farmers producing the raw material, supplying to the agro industries. That would be mainly the role of private sector and also of government. Even later, a cooperative of farmers could undertake setting up industries that would process the raw materials of the farm. We also need to strengthen farmers' cooperatives or collective farms that will serve as complementing or parallel institutions to the local governments in terms of social and economic community needs. In the case of Miarba and Hekarba, they were able to set up their own policies, their own. They have helped their members even at the time of the start of the COVID-19 crisis. The farmers' cooperatives and collective farms need to establish community preparedness in adapting health crises such as COVID-19. And this could be done through participatory adaptation planning that should be done in the community for proactive preparedness for such health crisis. As shared by Imelda, they were able, their livestock production were able to provide food. Aside from their rice production, they were providing food for their members. And this was done because their organization looks into the welfare of every family in their community. We have to engage in advocacy for improved local public health systems, and this is realized more in the lower class municipalities. In the case of La Castellana, it's a third-class municipality. It doesn't have a hospital. So there are problems. There are times wherein people who need the immediate attention, especially during the time of the pandemic, they could not get immediate medical attention. The previous pandemic taught us the imperative for having participatory information dissemination. Also, the LGUs were not able to provide enough information on this COVID crisis and basic rationalization why we have to undertake all these safety protocols. It was done by ATFI. So the farmers were able to cope up with the strictures that were imposed during this pandemic. even the provision of protective materials, contraptions, gadgets for complying with the safety protocols were not provided by the government, and it was more provided by ATFI and the Farmers Association to their members. So ATFI should lobby before the municipal and local governments for fully equipped and sufficiently staffed public hospitals that could attend to the emergency and serious cases as well as pandemic cases that will contain this contagion. And aside from that, in fact, there was an incident in Miarba wherein one farmer got sick with tetanus, and he was not able to go to the hospital for fear that he might be declared as a COVID victim. So after a certain number of days, the farmer contracted the lockjaw, and yeah, he eventually died. When he was brought to the hospital, finally, the doctors were even thinking that it was a case of COVID-19. So there was no hospital in La Castellana. It has to be brought to a hospital in a next district. No? So we believe that there should be public hospitals at the municipal level with enough medical staff and enough facilities. There's also a need for adequate healthcare insurance and comprehensive social protection for the farmers. And right now, we have facilitated the farmers to become members of PhilHealth, SSS, Social Security, but this should be done on a broader level, and at the same time, we think that the PhilHealth should be complemented with other medical insurance that could be made affordable to the farmers. The emergence of the health crisis could be prevented through sustainable ecological system that reinstates biodiversity and the integrity of our common home. The scientists themselves say that this COVID-19 and all the other viral diseases such as SARS, Ebola, they could have been a result of the continuing climate change. So to prevent it, we see that we have to promote and propagate production systems that are adapted to prevent degradation and destruction of our natural environment, our forests, and our waterways. Sustainable and natural farming using appropriate technology should be given more emphasis by farmers and the government agencies. There should be conversion to renewable energy that it has to be hastened and widely practiced. There is a strong movement against the coal plants in Negros, and there's a drive for setting up more solar farms that will promote renewable energy. Pollutants such as plastics and fossil fuel-based materials has to be systematically effaced and replaced with sustainable materials and resources. So we also have a campaign for doing away with plastics. I think it's also being done in other parts of the country. But it's still at a very lower level. So we see this that it should be part of the new normal situation so that we could prevent the emergence of more health crises in the process. So to have resilience, attain resilience, we should be really open to change. And we have to really change our past lifestyle and adapt to the present new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you for the comprehensive presentation. So from the presentation of Ted and the partner people's organizations of Alter Trade Foundation Incorporated, they actually presented not only what they're doing as social enterprises, but also as part of their advocacy for broader change in the provincial level in Negros, no? And the island of Negros as a whole. So we're now, I think, open to, we're now ready for the open forum. We have until around 5:25 to have questions before we wrap up. So if you have any questions, you may unmute your mic. You may ask to be recognized by raising your hand. Or you can simply send something via chat. Yeah. So there are 3 ways that you can actually ask a question or participate in the discussion. So any questions from the audience? Before that, with us this afternoon, we have we want to recognize as they actually registered in the chat box. The Bihani Social Venture Nepal, Oxfam, Dan Foundation, PRM, and of course earlier we saw Credit. No? So thank you for joining us, and thank you for those who haven't really talked to us through the chat box, but do participate in the open forum now. Any questions or comments?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, Shanti.
I'm Shanti Venkatesh from Dan Foundation.
Yes, Shanti, go ahead.
Yes, I'm coordinating our social enterprises, Advanced Center for Enabling Social Enterprises. I have one questions from that already it's explained that Alter Trade Foundation.
Yes,
that
go ahead.
Foundation have any registered farmer organization for banana or that crops, fruits, jute itself, it's there or not? Or
so your question has to do with, do you have any registered farmers organizations that
is
are...
there they are coordinating or not? Here is there or not? Yeah, that presentation.
So Edwin, Shanti of Dan Foundation is asking if you have any registered farmers organizations that are producing fruit or fruit products. You're muted, Edwin. Please unmute yourself. I cannot hear you, Edwin. Please unmute yourself. You are muted.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. When you, I presume it's the certification she's asking is about organic certification or fair trade certification.
No. I think he's asking if you are engaged with any farmers organizations that are producing fruits.
Yeah. Our farmers organizations are yes, fruits, but they are more for the local market. For example, in the case of Picarba, they are producing plantain bananas, and they are cutting them into chips and strings, and they are processed and sold to the local market. But some of our farmers are producing turmeric and ginger tea, health products. There are Sambong herbal tea there, and of course they are now producing the community-based muscovado. It's the It's the non-centrifugal sugar that is now produced at the community level. So Hekarban, Mayarba, and another farmers organization, Santa Rita, are leading the experiences in the community-based muscovado production.
Sir, any registered in your country, registered organization is there in your cooperative federation or cooperatives registered by any legally you are registered, the farmers are not.
So what, Ted, I think the question is, are your farmers' organizations legally registered? Yeah.
Are not,
Yes,
yes.
actually, it's a basic requirement for our partnership with the farmers organizations that they should be registered in any of the government agencies, in social, in SEC, it could be in the Department of Labor, or they are registered with the DAR or the Sugar Regulatory Administration. So yes, it is a requirement.
So in a pandemic period, do you face any that critical situations for trading and marketing? The farmers are facing any critical situation for doing that marketing and business. How will you manage your? How will you manage, or how will you sustain their activities in your part?
So I think the question, Ted, has to do with during the pandemic, how did you sustain the trading and marketing
Yes.
of the farmers' organizations? Yes.
Yeah, during the pandemic, really there was a lot of difficulties because there were strictures in the border crossing. So farmers cannot bring their products, whether they are fresh or processed products, outside of their municipality.
Mm.
So there was a problem even in the need for materials that will be used for processing could not be easily availed by the farmers. So during this ECQ, the enhanced community quarantine, there were a lot of disruptions in marketing the products.
Thank you, Ted. Okay, there's
Thank you,
another
sir.
question. There's another question from Ria Toquero, actually from Isaiah. Calito mentioned in his recorded message that over 70% of their PO members are now above the poverty line. What are the factors that are keeping the other 20% below the poverty line? How can this be addressed? Ted?
Yeah. Actually, yes, Dito was citing a general average among the NOFTA farmers, but in their community, they have reached a higher level. Even in Miarba, they have reached a level of 90%. So the factors that we studied, one is the size of the family, the household, and then also the lifestyle. Some farmers would be good in saving wise in saving their income and using it for education. But there are others who would spend their profits in, let's say, the new gadgets, the new computers. So in terms of providing for their immediate needs or basic needs, there are some shortages. So the tendency is to borrow outside of the community. So actually, we are discouraging it. In fact, in the case of Niarba, they allotted funds from their profits, from the collective profits of their organization. They allotted funds to be borrowed by these these families who are lagging behind the poverty line to enable them to set up their own livelihood projects at the household level. So, so far, it has been helpful in drawing them to the threshold, to the poverty threshold.
Maybe Ted, you can also explain that among the 13 farmers organizations, no, the level of development is at different levels, yeah? And maybe the organizations where Imelda and Lito come from are actually the most advanced, no, among the 13, yeah? Yes. And maybe most of the 30% are coming from communities where the others are less developed, people's organizations. Would you like to explain that, please?
Yes, because during the past 5 years, we have we established partnership with farmers from the protected areas, and these are the areas up in the slopes of the volcano, and they have less land for their farms, and they have all this problem on irrigation, and some of them are come from the indigenous communities. So we exerted efforts in developing their own products. Most of them are root crops, processing the root crops, and they are actually now the focus of our scholarship program for the youth, for college scholarship, so that their youth would also be helpful in their community needs and also for the needs of the family.
So maybe part of the factors for the 30% is the level of engagement also with outer trade, no? Because I think these communities were just engaged just recently, right? Where the other communities, yeah. So yeah, so that's another factor. There's another question from Prashant Kalaoni. He asks, how difficult has it been working with communities and local governments? How have you been able to overcome them? So Ted, would you like to?
Difficulties in dealing with local governments?
As well as communities.
Yes, for communities, we really have to engage in participatory processes. And it has to be a very repetitive process every year. And usually our agriculturists, we have agriculturists, accounting graduates, community organizers working at the community level. And we really have to guide them, especially during the first years of partnership with them. And we actually, for example, in the case of Miarba, we have partnership with them in year 2000. But it took about 5 years before they were able to stabilize their production system, their organizational management. Also in the case of Hikarba. So, but we cannot say that each community are the same. No? So, also in terms of the local culture, we really have to engage them, but the participatory processes in training them, we design local trainings that are based on their actual situations.
How about governments then?
Local governments, not all local governments are very, shall we say, cooperative, but because they saw that we have successes in poverty reduction, they welcomed us in the development councils. So, but there are also local governments who are very focused also in rural development. very few, but we also engage with them. In La Castellana, it's fortunately the local officials were very cooperative. Also in Don Salvador Benedicto, in La Carlota, the place of Ecarpa. So, but not all, because there are also local governments that are being led by, shall we say, officials who are not really looking after the farmers' welfare. They're just implementing projects, delivering projects, and not really seeing if these projects are based on the needs of the farmers or has been helping the farmers after they have established it.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Another question from Mayan, Mayan Mendoza from Oxfam. Mayan, would you like to ask the question, please? Mayan, where are you?
Okay. Can I just do it audio? No
Yeah,
more.
sure, no problem.
It's related to what was mentioned earlier by Mr. Edwin Lopez, that some of the farmers incur debt because they spend some of their money and not beyond the essentials. No? For example, some gadgets he mentioned. No? So could these gadgets be the non-essentials, so-called? Is this in any way also helping them, especially recently, in their livelihood, no? In terms of access to information, exchange, connecting with outside world, no? And if it does, what is, and also I'd like to know what is the level of connectivity of the farmers now in terms of access to a mobile phone, whether QWERTY or smartphone, or maybe a public internet facility or a facility owned by the cooperative or the organization. No? And the other questions below that, still related to that, if at all there's some level of connectivity or a potential for that, do they even receive information on disaster alerts that might affect their crops or their other livelihoods? And any critical news from the government, market price changes, if ever, if not from the ITC gadgets, where do they get this? That's just one whole set of questions on ITC, the infrastructure available at the community level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayan. So, Ted?
Yeah. Of course, the access to gadgets and all these type of modern equipment or communication equipment are not really negative, but actually there's a positive thing about it. But for actually, this becomes a problem because if the prices of this, the cost of these items compared to the income of the families will not be on a balance, because it's not really affordable for the families. Now, for example, in the case of Miyarba and Decarba and other progressive associations, they are now computerized. They have these smartphones also, but more at the level of the organization, and because they have already provided for their food, they built their homes, and they have sent their children to school. So when the farmers do their community planning, they line up the priorities that they would spend their income. You know? So they usually the basic priorities are food, education, and when they start developing their homes, acquiring appliances, they have already solved their food problem and they have sent their children to school. No, the fourth would be on health. So some families would spend on non-essentials even at the earlier level of their development work. So the tendency is to incur debts, incur debts. No? Also, one major problem also is the hospitalization, especially of the elderly, and wherein farmers have to spend a lot, and they could not cope up with the expenses. So that's also one factor. Hospitalization, and sometimes when their children get married, they have to spend their income on those occasions, special occasions. So the tendency is to borrow outside of their organization. So these are factors that drains their income, but really it shows us that these are maybe necessary, but we really have to build their capacity and their financial capabilities. And that's why we engage in entrepreneurship. We call it community enterprises, because as long as they are limited to production of raw materials that are being bought by traders outside of their farms at the farm gates, the farmers will remain really poor. So if they process their own products at the farm level and deliver it to the consumers, they are actually creating a higher value of their products, and at the same time they are generating more income for their households.
Thank you, Ted. We actually have only around a few minutes more left, so I would read three more questions that were sent through the chat box. No? One is, do you serve farmers outside of Negros Island? The second question is, how do you manage or calculate profit sharing with the beneficiaries, and how have they worked out repayment of loans? And then the third question from Marlon Palomo from PRM is about, how does Alter Trade see their social enterprise future with COVID-19 extending beyond the medium term? No? And also the same question, another question from him about the application of social return on investment on Alter Trade's impact. Yeah, have you done this, and can you explain the result in general? No? So maybe Ted, you can answer the questions that were raised by these three participants.
Yeah, ATFI is actually focused on first in the province of Negros Occidental, but later we were asked to help in other areas in Negros Oriental. So we're really operating at the island level. So we cannot think of establishing projects outside of Negros, because the needs of the Negros communities has to be given full focus by ATFI. Yes, we engage with other NGOs. Sometimes we are invited to give trainings in Mindanao and even in Luzon, but those are not regular engagements of the foundation. Regarding profit sharing, Alter Trade Foundation is not really a business organization. We are an NGO that is rendering services to farmers. So the ones who are really generating profits from their products are the farmers. We develop their capacity to grow every year from their engagement in production. Then the payment of loans, yes, we have affordable loans provided to the farmers, and then we for every crop year, the payments of the farmers are returned to them as in the form of production credit that they apply on their production. So the funds revolve every year for every crop year. So there's another about investments.
Yes, and also about how are you on the long term, on the medium term, no? With COVID-19 happening at the medium term, what are your prospects for social enterprise development?
So as I have presented, under the new normal, we're looking into food production. One is to ensure food at the household level, and also production of surplus that would generate income for our partner communities, and also provide food to the adjacent areas, especially in the urban communities. And the type of trading that we are establishing is direct trading from the farmers to the consumers.
So also maybe you can say something about SROI, or would you want me to say something about that, because that was our joint study, remember? But you can't, Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, we are, if you're looking after the return in investment.
The social return on investment.
Yeah, it's more on the social aspect. How much we have improved in terms of the community health, how much we have improved in terms of the level of education. I think those are what we could say as the gains of our work or our services, but these are not really financial profits.
So the social return on investment, by the way, that we did, no? I say the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia actually did this with Altertrade, and the figure that we got, no, for the engagement you did with agrarian reform beneficiaries was for every peso invested over a period of 5 years, yeah, you were able to generate 13 pesos, yeah. So there was actually a return on investment for every 1 peso. In terms of the blended value of financial and social returns, it was for every 1 peso, 13 pesos in return, right? Just to remind you, Ted, you might have forgotten. Yeah. So anyway, in relation to the future beyond in the medium term, would you like to expound on that some more? The SE future of Altertrade, because I was just wanting to ask you to also explain that actually your group of social enterprises is not only NOFTA and Altertrade Foundation, but there's also a third company called NOFTA Fair Trade House. Can you explain that a little bit? Maybe that would be interesting for the audience.
Yeah. So it is NOFTA Fair Trade House. It's a creation both of Altertrade Foundation and the NOFTA to create a trading arm between the producers towards the consumers. So NOFTA Fair Trade House has been engaged with programs of the provincial government, especially in marketing, with BPI, in their organic markets. But yeah, so but it is also confined within the level of the province and the city market. So our direction, of course, is especially now that there is restriction in travel, and we can only engage in the local market through the NOFTA Fair Trade House.
So thank you, Ted. And I think we have reached the end of the webinar. Thank you very much to Alter Trade Foundation Incorporated and to our the partner people's organizations of NOFTA, and as well as MIARBA and HICARPA. Thank you very much for the participation also of our regulars and those who registered specifically for this webinar with Alter Trade Foundation. So with that, thank you again, and we'd like to invite you to the webinar next week, no? And the webinar next week will feature social enterprises and social organizations in China. And our friends from the rural reconstruction movement in China are actually going to be presenting a webinar entitled Building the Social Connection and Resilience During Lockdown, How Social Organizations Responded to COVID-19 Pandemic in China. So from the Philippines today, China next week. We would like to invite everyone to join us then. Thank you very much for participating in this webinar series. Goodbye.